So thanks for joining us for the after moments of the latest Pastoral Leadership Connection as we take the time to talk through the video about when to quit goals and how to let go of people. So grateful to be joined by all these folks that are on the call. And so just want to take a few moments and just take the opportunity to hear from you all. What did you hear? What stood out to you? What was helpful? What was something you agreed with? Maybe even what's something that you disagreed with? And I'm going to start with Brother Wendell. He's had a lot of time working in a business world. This massive franchise operation that at one point was had billions and billions of hamburgers sold. But Brother Wendell, what did you hear in the video that stood out to you as you think about goal setting, when to quit goals, and even how to let go of folks in a volunteer situation versus a paid situation?
Well, first and foremost, we all should be operating from a goal perspective, goal set perspective. I've heard it, and I believe in this statement, this phrase, that a man that fails to plan plans to fail. And so I utilize that quite often in business, but also now in the pastoral leadership and the visions that the Lord God has given to me. It is clear to me that I got to have plans. And those plans oftentimes require incorporating or involving others. I subscribe to Jethro's teachings to Moses when he came out to visit him in the wilderness. You can't do it all by yourself. So that dictates to me that we're going to have to incorporate others to help us accomplish the visions that we have before us. What I love about some of the things that I heard, and because it ties right into what I firmly believe, I like to believe that I am a people-oriented person, and that would even help explain why I left the business world to come into the kingdom world. I have a passion in me to help people maximize their potential. That's a key phrase right there for managing and leading people. You want to help them maximize their kingdom potential in this kingdom world in which we operate. And here's something that has been very, and the video reminded me to make sure I stay close to this, is that you want to make sure when you choose a person, you want to make sure that you're choosing a person that you will not allow to fail. I'm going to say that again. It is the firing or the let go process should begin before you choose the person. As a business person, I've hired and had to release, hundreds of people, in my business career, and have experienced that in the ministry, as well. How do you manage people? Here's a key point. I don't take up too much of your time.
We're going to give you your own podcast someday, Brother Wendell.
Yeah. But it's so important to make sure that you choose the right person for the job before you assign a person to the job. Because if you choose the wrong person and then you give them expectations that they are not gifted, they are not talented, they are not anointed to do, the chances are they're going to fail. So the process begins, with choosing the right person. And then checking with that goal setting. You got to make sure that you're following up along the way. Yeah. Don't allow a person to get to the end or the measuring point and say, you failed, and therefore I got to let you go. No, we don't want to do that. And then one other quick point that I'll make is, even when I got to the point of having to release an individual, I made sure that I did what I'm supposed to do, meaning I made sure I put the right person in the right job and I supported them along the way. That's so key in ministry, ladies and gentlemen. And then many times when I would sit down with a person in an exit interview, one thing that I would find is I put the person in the wrong position. I'll just briefly, rather than having a person up front meeting and greeting customers, that might need to be the person in the back helping to produce the product or the service, So we just need to make sure that we position people to be successful, and by reevaluating, even at the exit process, is there another place where you could be supportive of this ministry? So let me get out the way. But I hope that's what I picked up out of that. And this session is helping to reconfirm and to stay close to those things that have helped me be successful when it comes to managing and leading people.
Brother Wendell, thank you so much for those insights from your experience in the business world and trying to navigate those into the church world. I think that discernment piece is so incredibly important. I've kind of heard it summarized as be slow to hire and quick to fire is kind of one of those ideas that is at play. But before you are too quick to fire, you do the evaluation. Did you set them up for success? And even discerning what is the right role for somebody in ministry. This is tough. This is tough because, Pastor Tony, I'm going to ask you to weigh in a little bit on this because you've been pastoring a few years, and pastoring, we don't always get the luxury of choosing who comes to our team, and so maybe just share what you heard in the video, and maybe give a little bit of thoughts on the whole. We don't get the luxury of choosing who walks in through the door, and sometimes we're desperate for people who breathe. Go ahead, Pastor Tony.
Yeah, Pastor Wendell hit on where my mind was going. That wasn't mentioned in any of the videos or any of the conversation. And that is that oftentimes, you hit on it, in the church, we inherit people. And we didn't put in a position. And so therefore, how do we? I have a question. I had a question in my mind as I was listening to all this. I heard about the day after perfect, when to quit goals, about prayer, about several things. I'm gonna try to get all of them. There's so much to write down. I couldn't write all of it down. You had too much content. But anyway, though, the thing is, for most of us, we inherit people in positions. I've inherited in 4 different congregations people that were already in place. So how do you identify? How do you help people who are part of the team to not have to fire them, but get them to a place where they can adjust or shift from the greeter to the back door person? Mm-hmm. Both are important.
Yes.
But if you got the wrong person in the wrong place, they will fail. And your organization will also suffer and fail. We've experienced some of that just recently. Mm. We have people in place that were in place, didn't have the gift, all the gifts, didn't have even really the real interest. They were holding a position. They were a body in a position. So we find ourselves in most of our smaller congregations. I'm always pastor a small congregation. Mm-hmm. People, because they're there, they are doing whatever, but they might be the wrong person in the wrong place. So how do we shift them? They still willing to work. How do we shift them from where they are to where they can benefit the group? That's my question for today.
Yeah. And Brother Tony, I think that is so difficult for us to navigate because, I know for me, in my experience, I'm trained to, keep everybody, and there's a side of me that wants to keep everybody happy. And when it comes to these types of conversations, there's always the risk that I will upset them, and the risk that they will leave. And when a church member leaves, they usually don't leave alone, because most of us live in situations where our churches have a lot of people that are connected. And sometimes what can happen is that when we think we're asking somebody else to leave, they can turn the tables around and ask us to leave. And as a result of that, depending on the congregation system, we could lose our job. And so there is a lot riding on this type of conversation. And I do think it boils down to first approaching things relationally. And that's why I said, go and have coffee with them, have a conversation with them, begin to know them more personally. Second is, walk through the process of the goals that are articulated. And this is where, a lot of times in my experience, what I found is that things start to bubble up, and I begin to find out that I have a different set of goals than they have. And if we can find a way to come into agreement on our goals, then we find ways to move forward. And, we may have the agreement that, hey, the lawn needs to be mowed every week. And then they go, but I can't do that every week, Pastor. And so therefore they, kind of admit that their inability to live up to the goal helps them to begin the realignment process. I already knew they couldn't mow it every week because they weren't keeping up with it, but I shared with them the value of why we need to mow it weekly and the importance of that. They agree on that value and that goal, and then they begin to identify that it's not right for them. That's, for me as a leader, that's the first mode that I'm working in, is I want the person in my congregation to more aptly identify for themselves how they're fitting in alignment with the goals that I'm putting forth, the elders and the leadership of the church are putting forth. I want them to identify with that. Now, I also know that sometimes people don't see themselves and judge themselves fairly or rightly. And so they have an underestimated or an overestimated view of themselves. And so it gets complex. So if we, have the conversations about goals and alignments and they're not willing to budge, then I have to lean in a little bit further and have the really hard conversation and say, I'm not sure this is best for you. I have said those words and have been fired because of those. I've also said those words and helped people own up to that and transition out. And in the process, they stayed in the church and their stress level changed dramatically, and my stress level changed dramatically. But when we came to the point of separation or change in those, I took the opportunity to be as gracious as I could afford, and extended to them some acts of appreciation and celebration. So whether that was a gift card, thank you for all your work, a public celebration, or we've done some things that are even more elaborate than that, depending on the term of service that somebody's had. I think it's an important step, not only for you as the leader, for the individual who's on the receiving end, but for the congregation as a whole to understand what's taking place. And this is where it can be really difficult, is, for people to kind of navigate through that. I was in a situation where one of the jobs I got fired from, this was the gracious one. The employer gave me 6 months severance. And I was just blown away by that. So, all right, Brother Tony, you got a little bit more you want to throw in on that. Go ahead.
Just one more thing, and that is that sometimes in the modern day church culture, might have been not so modern, but it's been happening a long time. I've been pastoring 45 years. Sometimes people won't give you the opportunity to meet with them before they leave, and then pull people away.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that for 45. I've been pastoring 45 years. Mm-hmm. I've experienced that over and over and over again with people. They're not honest enough to say, I disagree with you, whatever. They'll just depart, and they'll be missing, and the like. I'll leave it there.
Yeah,
but it's too common.
I hear you, my friend, and that's heartbreaking. That is heartbreaking every time it happens. Every time it happens, and as shepherds, we're left with going, okay, did that sheep run away? Did that sheep get stolen? And what do I do about that sheep? Is it just lost that I need to go find it? And those are situationally based, and there's no hard and easy rule for these sort of things. That goes back to even the opening of the video where Gary V said, hey, when it comes to when do you quit, there's so many nuances and so many details that go into it. And so when do you quit on one of your members? Right? I mean, I have a goal. I want to pastor everybody in my church. And I remember several years ago that I sat down with somebody I consider to be a friend. And I just had to say, I'm sorry, I can no longer be your pastor. I had to resign as their pastor. Boy, that was hard. But I've also had people who I thought were friends who left church and never came back. And I'm like, what'd I do? And they won't answer my call or any of those. So and this is why this is so hard, because it's emotionally charged, and there's a lot that goes into it. And shame, I think, is a major part of it. Tim and Andy, let's weigh in with you all. Give some of your perspective. What did you hear in the video that maybe stood out to you? What insights would you like to share? Don't forget to come off of mute, guys.
Hey, we're there. I think the one thing that I was thinking on is that we need to make sure that we don't have lone rangers that self-appoint themselves to a position. And at the same time, we don't need to put ourselves in positions as a pastor as being the only one that brings somebody on or takes somebody off. You need to check and balance. Um, if somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, I want to be the youth leader," they don't appoint themselves. We don't appoint them to that. We say, "That is a great idea. Tell me what your ideas are. What do you see? What's your vision of this?" I'm going to take it to the board and I'm going to suggest it. Then the board's going to want you to come in and share your view again. And so I think it's important that we create a checks and balance where everything doesn't end up on the pastor's shoulders. And like I said, too, in small churches, we really need to avoid self-appointed positions because that's when we can usually get in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents.
And Tim, I think that's excellent 2 cents right there. And it ties in a little bit with what we heard from Bishop Jakes with regards to the sense of agreement and, finding that, it's not just an individual who's got it, but, the agreement piece. And so really appreciate that. Andy, anything you want to weigh in on there? I know Tim shared his 2 cents, but didn't know if maybe you had 3 more and we could get a nickel out of all that.
No, I was just thinking that one of the reasons that the church brought us in was to make sure everybody was functioning in the right positions here and to switch people around if we needed to. And there was one person that was not in the correct position and he ended up firing himself. So that worked out well.
Yeah.
There might be a few people that need tweaking still, but we're slowly working on it.
Yeah. And it's easy when the firing of themselves is graceful, but as Brother Tony brought up, sometimes it doesn't feel graceful because it's just an abandonment, and that's hard in there too. Ken, I see that you've got your camera on. Didn't know if you wanted to weigh in on some thoughts here, or what you heard, or what maybe stood out to you, particularly from your perspective and your experience of not only being a pastor, but working in the missionary world, working as a volunteer coordinator and mentorship programs, all sorts of areas that you bring some insight into. Anything you want to weigh in on?
I'm glad you started with Pastor Wendell because he said everything on my mind pretty much. I use a system called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which has a scorecard. So the only thing I would add is that I found that goals are, you have a year goal, 3 years, 5-year goals, but really in terms of staffing, a 90-day period is about a good rate for goals. So if you're going to be a lead pastor, then you have to lead. And so on my system, it's a spreadsheet, and it has the goals, and it has my goals right there for the whole team to see, so that they can see my goals. And then on a weekly basis, like Pastor Wendell said, you don't want to start somebody and then fire them. You've got to be, there's a process in terms of checking in and accountability. So with the EOS system, we use every week, we have a check-in. People can hear yes or no if I've filled out my goals or not. And so it holds me accountable to my team as well as to the elders, because they see those things as well. Yeah. Those things are checked off. And so sometimes I think as leaders, we think of our job as holding everybody else accountable. But as you said when we started, Malcolm, it really begins with us.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is the importance, it's been said by several of you, the importance of hiring well. I hired you, Malcolm, for Dallas. That was a good hire. Isn't Malcolm doing a great job? He's doing a great job. He's doing a great job in Dallas. He's doing a terrific job on these things. So it's been great. In terms of that, though, a board member of mine reminded me yesterday. He said, oftentimes the people that look good on paper are not the right people. It's really up to the Lord. And so you think about Moses, didn't want the job, but he got it. Deborah didn't want the job, but she got it. David was a ruddy youth. He was the youngest, and he got the job. The guy that looked good on paper was Saul. So it's really a matter in terms of church life of doing what Andy said and talking to people, or Tim, and really talking seriously to the Lord, hearing from the Lord, and seeing who the right person is, and that will help a great deal in the process.
Ken, thanks so much for that. I think that the idea of process is something that we struggle with in our church operations. And it may be something we have as a future conversation about what are some process tools that we can use. But so much of church life tends to be just a feeling of it felt good on Sunday morning, or it felt good, the way things took place in that distribution of food or in that youth ministry day or whatever. And we haven't paused to really consider, where are we going? How is our process leading us there? And in addition to us as leaders struggling with that, because we struggle with that, I think our governance systems, whether it's a board of trustees or elders or whatever it may be, church council, I think that they struggle to navigate the process. And this is where some of the principles that we see applied in the business world really struggle to come into the church world, because the church world is strongly relational, and relationships are strongly held together by their feelings rather than coming together around a shared set of values and goals that then influence the direction that we move forward. And so finding a way to process things with others and finding the questions to ask, I think Ken, his observation of the EOC or EOS rather, is an important thing. Do you have a system? I shared with you that I use Chat GPT just to generate those 10 questions. If you don't know what Chat GPT is, Google it. Basically, it is an artificial intelligence that you can have conversation with, that you can ask questions and it will give you answers, and you can say it cites sources, and it's pulling from the entire web. I've been playing with it for about 2 weeks now, and I love it. It's fascinating for me. But maybe you're like, oh, it can help you in research. It can help you in so many different areas. But if you're going to use it, cite the source. Okay. That's so that way you're not caught in the world of plagiarism. But I think that, just if you go back and watch that video, the 10 questions, it generated those 10 questions faster than I could. So if you just Google Chat GPT, then it will pull it up. It's the artificial intelligence. It's the rage that the academic community is trying to figure out what to do with, because it will write a 5-paragraph essay in no time flat. Those 10 responses that you saw when I asked you, it generated the answers faster than I could type my prompt. It generated the answers in less than 1 minute. So use tools such as an evaluation system or ChatGPT to help you process things. Use the relationships around you, not for your benefit in the sense of just only you, but recognize that God's placed these people around you for the purpose of discerning and agreement. So, all right, Brother Rojas, we're going to weigh in here with you. We'll let you kind of share any quick insights that you have on what you heard today.
Okay, I appreciate that, brother. I tend to look at things in light of the Bible, in light of Jesus Christ, and the thought that keeps coming back to my mind is Jesus and the apostles. And there was a few rascals in that community. But it's very interesting to think that the Lord Jesus, he didn't fire anybody. He kept them right till the very end. I mean, Peter was no good to begin with. Peter was a disaster in public relations, and Judas, Judas, wow, that guy was stealing. He was one of those treasurers that you find out about the problem later on. Jesus could have fired them, but Jesus stayed with them right till the very, 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 very end. Okay, I just leave that with you all to think about.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Brother Rojas. Thank you so much, because if we look at the ministry of Jesus, he was not one who just let them get away with anything. He corrected them when the correction was there, needed, and he guided them, and he restored them when they messed up. There's so many different pieces to the ministry of Jesus and his apostles that is helpful for us. And when we step back and we remember that we're in a relational business, we're in a relational organization, and we have the opportunities to lean in and develop people, sometimes what that does is that forces us to reevaluate the goals that we have set. Sometimes our goals are not about the people, they're about our pride. And that is a hard thing for us to wrestle with. And did Jesus call us to build something for ourselves, or did Jesus call us to be a part of his kingdom being built? And that, I'll close with that. I hope that's beneficial for you all. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the call today. Don't forget to use resources out there such as ChatGPT or an evaluation system or whatever, but do the process. Don't just run on the feeling, and set your goals in the right direction. In the meantime, keep leading well by caring for the souls entrusted to you well. Thanks so much, y'all.